Hey guys, what's going on? It's been a little while since I've done these types of videos, but this is going to be an illustration masterclass. This is going to be on the illustrator Matt Sellers. And for those that are new to the channel that haven't seen this, essentially what it is that I do is I look at the art of this really badass artist and I break down some of the things it is that I see, some of the things it is that I notice that we can take and learn from these different artists as a way to improve our own ability to draw, but also just to show celebration and recognition for other great artists that have accomplished things that we want to. So this is Matt Sellers. Of course, as usual, I have a link to the video, to the ArtStation profile down below, or any social media that I find on him. But this guy is a fantasy sci-fi illustrator, and the stuff that he does, man, he's so good. He's got like this crazy vibrancy with his color, and I really want to take a look at it and see what it is that I can decipher. And then of course I'm gonna shoot him a video of this, and who knows, maybe he can come in with a couple of comments about the way he works. But what I like to do for the most part is like to zoom out. So if I look at this image from far away, we can start to see that there is some very key compositional decisions it is that Matt made right from the jump. Okay, and these are things that you really find them whenever it is that you're doing the thumbnail. And that's really what it is that we're looking at whenever we zoom out from a piece, is that we're really looking at a thumbnail of the illustration itself, right? So as I go in and I zoom in to the piece, the things it is that were already standing out before become more and more of the focal point. It becomes clearer and clearer that he wanted to put the most amount of attention at the focal points. And so let's go back out here, and we can see he wants our attention right where that sliver of light is, right? He's created this kind of, if I draw all over this right here, he's created this kind of holding space in between this giant head and these figures here. And then of course this bird. And then we have like this kind of lighting that's hitting the side of this face, right? And these are kind of like the main focal point. And I guess you would say this water down here as well kind of completes that, right? Now, if you look at everything else around it, like this space up here, right? All of this space down here, this space here, it all falls into shadow. Even over here, we have this front part. We have this nice little piece of foliage. And then we have this rock right here, and here, and here, right? I guess you could say this water is also a part of the focal point, but, or well, it helps guide our eye back to the focal point. But everything is kind of centered around this dramatic point that he's trying to capture with this illustration, right? So when we take a closer glance at it, now that we're looking at it from up close, the story is 100% apparent. And that's really the challenge of an illustrator is that you're not just illustrating a cool picture. AI could do something like that. That's not really what it is that illustrators do. What illustrators do is that they tell a story. And they tell a story that is captivating and it draws your attention in. And so clearly we can see that we've got these two robbers here, and these two bandits, and they're trying to get to, I would assume they're trying to get to this eye over here, right? They're trying to get to this crystal or this ruby or something like that, in order to get it from this ancient structure, this ancient sculpture. But unfortunately for them, it looks like there is a bird that has some eggs hanging out here in this sculpture's mouth, and so the eagle is coming in to basically defend its nest, right? And so there's like this conflict of interest, which I think is really cool. I think that's a really cool story idea, right? It's like maybe the bandits, they don't really care. They're not trying to get to the eggs. Maybe they are trying to get to the eggs. Maybe that is the story. You know, maybe they're going to make some omelets with these eggs. Who knows? But to me, it seems like obviously the thing it is that they're really wanting is this eye right here. And so there's a couple of different things that the artist is doing in order to help us with that. There's different decisions that the artist is making that we'll talk about here. So we've got this light kind of focused in on this one area where it is that he wants us to look, and if we make this black and white, it becomes even more apparent when I zoom out where it is that our focal point is. Our focal point is going to be the point of the highest contrast. And so that means the most amount of detail is going to be in that area. And when I say detail, essentially what it is that I mean is variety of value. So if we go over here and I take my brush and I start going in here and I start picking around here and I just start mapping out what it is that I see in terms of value, you can see just from this area alone there's a lot of different variations of value going on the stone, on the figure, right? And notice that the figures themselves are very dark. They're very dark on a very light background, so that's pushing them forward, right? Now we take that and we contrast that to, say, this corner over here, and we see that the variation between the lights and shadows in this space is like not much, really. Right? There's not that much variety in this area, in this top area. And that's because he wants to essentially hold that space back. This space is supposed to fall back. All of this space here, all of this is supposed to fall backwards. Right? So that's one decision it is that he's doing, is that he's keeping the values organized in a way in which it is that the greatest amount of contrast, the greatest amount of variety of values is going to be held where the story is taking place. And like I said, that it seems really obvious when you think about it that way, but when a lot of amateur artists try to create an illustration, a lot of the times they might put detail everywhere, right? So you might have a lot of detail up here and detail down here and detail over here, and it's just not necessary. Not only is it not necessary, it's going to conflict with where it is that the eye is supposed to go, right? So that's one of the decisions that he's making. Notice also that if I draw a line straight down here, if I draw a line that is straight here, notice it's not exactly, well, I guess it is somewhat, it looks like it's in the middle of the image, but I have a feeling that it's really not. I have a feeling that this side over here is slightly bigger than this side, right? There's more space over here than over here. I think it's very slight, but I would say that that's the case. And the reason that is important is that an image that's dead on in the middle, unless there's some sort of a counter weight to that, can make the image look very flat, right? But of course, Matt, he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. And so, you know, we've got these figures that have like these very expressive gestures, right? And then even these figures back here, right? Their gestures are very expressive. And of course, where are they looking? They're looking in this direction, right? So you have a lot of different leading lines that are keeping your eye in a specific pattern, right? So here we have this. This is keeping our eye from going off to the side. This is also directing our eyes back, right? So there's this kind of circular thing going on here. So we're gonna go ahead and jump to the next one. It's a beautiful piece. Now, like I said, this guy, his color work is just, it's so beautiful to me. I really enjoy it, and we might just go through and just look at some of these illustrations and just kind of admire them for the color, you know. But if I sit here and I make a palette out of his colors, you know, I can get all sorts of really beautiful greens and blues. And notice the figure down here, he's got like this very light green that goes with this kind of green down here on the bottom. All right? Which is interesting. Now, there's a different ways it is that you can express contrast, right? And one way it is that you can express contrast is through detail. And you can obviously see that there is a contrast going on here between one figure being giant and then the other figure being small, which is kind of creating this interesting way that he's able to differentiate the two, right? So he first off, he creates a pattern, right? Notice that these trees back here that are in the background, even though they are further in the background, again, another mistake it is that I would have made, especially in my early time doing illustration, is that I would have made these a lot darker. That's kind of the way it is that we tend to think about it. But if we look at these trees back here, they're actually very light. And we can see that the light back there is actually kind of like this dim, warm color, right? So there's this very warmish color that's sitting all the way in the back. And then we have these cooler greens that are filling in the background. So if I make it black and white, it becomes even more apparent. We can see that the figure itself, this Hulk figure, is on average much darker than these trees back here, right? These trees and the foliage and everything back there, it's very light compared to him, right? And so his dark body kind of creates this nice little silhouette that carves him out of the background. And so there's a contrast between the light and the dark in this respect. And then, of course, we also see the highest amount of color variation is the dynamic between these two. So we can see also that there's another pattern going on here, which is really interesting, which is that half of his body is hidden in shadow. We have this top part hidden in shadow, and also this bottom part, actually. It's all hidden in shadow. And then we have this other side here that's completely in the light, right? And so we have this light that's actually cutting across this way. It's cutting across him, it's hitting his body, and showing us the definition of his muscles, and then it's hitting here, and it's hitting the foliage over here, right? Which is creating another separation, another layer of separation between the Hulk figure and our hero here, right? And this foreground element. So this is in between these two characters, right? And so this helps differentiate between the different foreground, the background, the midground, and the foreground, right? With our main character being in the foreground. And then, of course, we see that there's a great amount of value going on here, a great amount of value variation going on here. And we can also notice that there's a lot of pointing going on with this, right? So you have this sword pointing here, and it's kind of doing this upward motion. And you could see that if you looked at it that way, it would loop back around. So in this next image, we can also see a couple of different things that are a recurring pattern in Matt's work. We can see, for example, that there's always this pattern of lighting, which is something it is that a lot of illustrators use. And if we go back and we look at the previous one, so we have this image here, just to wrap up this analysis of here, we have this light, and then we have kind of like this dark figure, and then we have another light figure, right? And so there's a patterning between light, dark, and light, right? And this kind of back and forth patterning, it helps create contrast. It helps us differentiate the different elements of background, midground, and foreground. And it also helps us push the things forward that we want to push forward. So when we look at this image, again, if we make it black and white and we shrink it down into a thumbnail, what do we see? We see this image that is, like I said before, it leans to one side, right? Our focal point is kind of at this point right here, right? And so there's this kind of cross section of where the image is, instead of it being directly in the middle. Now, I'm going to go back to the other piece in a minute and talk about why it is that image works and everything is situated directly in the middle. But for now, when we look at this, it's interesting to see, or it's important for us to see that our focal point is over here up to the top and to the right, but it's not all the way pushed here into the corner. Instead, what it is that we have here in the corner is we have this kind of shape, which is again a darker shape that combines with this shape here, right? We have this kind of shape as well. And then of course this combines with it. And so we have this nice little silhouette that is basically cut out and pushed forward, as opposed to this very sunny part of the image back here. And again, another one of the things that we can run into as a natural bias when we think about when we're painting something and when we're thinking about value, a lot of the times when we think of a value, we think of something, if it's far away, it's darker because it's further away from us. And clearly we can see when we look at the values here that this is not the case. The values in the background are very close together, right? So we have like values like this, and then we have values like this. And these values are very close together, right? And so it gives it this when values are close together like that, and they're very light, and they're light values, it can give us this feeling of something being very bright, right? When they're dark, like over here, and they're very close to one another, they give us the impression of something being pushed into the dark. The same principle is being applied here, which is that there is a great amount of organization in between light shapes and dark shapes, right? And then again, of course, what it is that we see, I'm gonna draw my pencil here, what it is that we see when we actually look at the image, the focal point of the image, what do we see? We see the highest variety of values, just like I spoke about before, right? So you can see the majority of the values are on this guy's face, which is naturally where it is that we tend to look anyway. But it's important to notice that he goes the extra mile by creating this dark shape and light interplay on the face, right? Which makes it really interesting and captivating to look at. All right, so if I turn off my stuff right here and we look back at it, I mean, the color is just wow. It's just so beautiful. But we start going in here, we start picking the colors, and we start, let me go back here. We start picking the colors again. In terms of value, they're very close, but it's deceptively so, right? You know, when I start looking at these colors in here, I almost get this impression when I have them over here to the side, I almost have this impression that this almost feels like a dark brown to me. I mean, this one definitely feels very dark, right? So there's this nice little variety of very bright colors. You know, he's got these oranges, he's got these browns, he's got these kind of peach-like colors that he's playing around with in here. Even kind of a yellow, right? He's got yellow in some of the brightest spots. And these colors together, when they're organized together, they give us this impression of something that is very blown out. You know, it's so bright that the light is hitting these other buildings, and then it's going into these shadowed areas, which kind of gives us this feeling of something very blown out. Now, there's another thing it is that he's doing, which is that he has this beautiful greenish blue sky behind him. And if we look at that in terms of just the value, we can see that the value almost matches with the value of some of these darker shapes of the building, which is interesting. Yeah, so there's a lot of use of very beautiful contrast of colors. And then we see here that he's also taken the same sort of greenish blue here, and he's pulling it into the foreground, right? And so if we start looking at the background colors, we see that they're variations of kind of the same thing, right? But obviously much darker. But clearly there's this contrast of orange and blue with a side of red and green that is playing out here, that is helping him organize his composition and make it so striking. Let's go ahead and let's do one more, and then we'll go ahead and we'll close it out. This is just, I mean, this guy is like really, really good with color. When I looked at this, I thought that, well, I mean, it looks like a traditionally done piece, but he's doing it digitally, and is really beautiful work. What I like about this is we can see how it is that he's able to group these different things. And again, we have this kind of classic thing it is that we talked about before. If I get rid of this layer and I start doing a little trace out of the image, we can again see that there is clearly a part that he does not want our eyes to pass, right? There's clearly a focal point, in other words. And it seems like what I've noticed is that these illustrators, they can create these kind of frames within a frame, right? So like you have this frame, which is basically your frame that goes all the way around the image, right? Which is your dimensions, whether you know you want it to be horizontally done or whether you want it to be vertical or whatever. But then you have a frame within a frame, right? You have the different elements that are basically all pointing your eye to a specific frame, right? So you have this frame right here, this big frame that I just drew around here, that is smaller on the top and bigger and wider on the bottom, which is interesting. And notice that all of the other lines are running either parallel or somehow converging with these lines that are creating this frame, right? So like these are all kind of leading into this frame. The sword is running parallel to this other frame it is that he's created. Same thing here. You could say this arm with the gesture of her head is helping create a frame, right? And it's almost creating kind of an echo because they're both slightly slanted to the side. This is also helping create the frame, right? These elements back here are also very important. And again, we have this kind of blown out light back here in the background, which I think is really beautiful. Now there's some interesting things he's doing with the color here. And that is that he seems to have a couple of different light sources of color in the image. So when I start going through here and I start color picking this image, I think what we're going to see is some different kinds of color from the light, right? So this here, it is very cool. There's a very cool color of light coming from up top. So there's this cool color of light coming in from the top left. And notice again, we have this kind of dynamic, which I meant to go back to that piece that I did before, but we have this kind of dynamic of the shadows being done in this very interesting way. And the same thing goes here. If I go back to this image, notice that when we look at this, we have this kind of dynamic of one part of his body, being out of the light, or in the light, with the head in the light, and then we have another part of the body out of the light, right? Notice that this is very much the same thing whenever it is that we look at this, right? We have different features of the face pushed into the shadows, which is basically all the facial features are pushed into the shadows. The eyes are pushed into the shadows, whereas all of the supporting structure around her head, here, it's all in the light. Then we see that there's another light that's coming from back here that is illuminating here, right? And we have the same thing. We have this light that's hitting the top of the head, but everything else is kind of falling into the shadow. And this light is very yellow. It's a very warm color, right? So there's this interplay between this very orange color, which you could say is, possibly the light that is coming in from over here, and it's hitting this armor and then bouncing up and hitting her face. And you can see that this blue, it carries over into the way it is that he painted this hair here, right? And notice that he's even being very gestural with what it is that he puts his attention on. On the spots where he wants us to look, we have that other element of contrast, which is that he renders those spots very well. He renders them very strongly, right? Like this face is rendered pretty strongly, but the hair is very loose. And notice that the forms of the hair, the edges of the hair, they kind of melt together between this lion and her, which is really nice. And of course, the shapes here, they just kind of fall into the shadow, right? And we have this other element back here, which is pointing us back down. And this is another framing element here, right? And so we have this light that's coming in, that's cutting across, helping us distinguish the features of her face and helping us distinguish some of the details of the armor. But as we look down, we see that a lot of the detail here is gone. Same thing with the detail in here for our figure, the lion, and of course the figures in the background. So let's take a look at this in the black and white, and let's turn this layer off. Again, we can see that there is a clear organization between light and dark shapes, with the light shapes being held specifically for where it is that he wants your eye to look, and for the sense of drama in the image. What kind of a story is it that he wants to tell you? What kind of a mood does he want to create, right? So that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. So this is kind of a return to form of what my channel has always been, which is more of an art instruction video series. Please guys, give me a like, give me a sub, give me a comment if you enjoy these types of videos, and I'll keep making them. In the meantime, I do want to give a thanks to my patrons. I've got 3 patrons right now that are helping me support this channel, and I really appreciate it. for $5 a month, you guys can jump in and support as well. And I'll be putting some early access videos there, as well as like some exclusive tutorials. And then I have other plans for different things it is that I want to do in going on and building my my library of videos and library of educational content. So if you're interested, the Patreon is in the link in the description box below. You can also check out my website if you're interested in taking a look at my prints or anything along those lines. And thank you guys for taking the time to watch my video. Let me know what you think. Take care.